and Putin. And I'm going to bring that up tonight.
Okay.
And I'm going to talk about the fact that you're fucking impotent.
Just like honey, sweet to taste on burning lips. Wanna lie beneath the water, feeling icy fingertips. Soothing nectar to my body, wash the image from my eyes. Dirty streets of hungry people, drink the water, dry your eyes. Let's not look at the reflections, listen to the music made. Drinking water's ease the mind, thoughts of you begin to fade.
And turn this crappy ass
Get yourself together before it's too late. Oh. Yeah, you're not going to believe this, ladies and gentlemen, and you four right there. You're not going to believe this, but I was really serious and down about 20 minutes ago, and I was completely...
boom.
We got Slow Man here tonight. I told him I like when he talks slowly, and this thing isn't that bad. He keeps blaming me. Okay. What do you got to say for yourself?
Listen, I'm doing this as simply as I can, appeal to the audience. Let's start with this. When they sent Superman out and gave him a sidekick, they didn't make that sidekick Mr. Goddamn Magoo. Well, I feel working with Brian is like working with an even slower version of Mr. Magoo. Now, seriously, I'm really working under duress here. I've got all kinds of repeat just here where I'm doing it from my studio. Now, you could say, Dave, it's your fault, and I would understand that. However, put the beginning on again.
Hold on.
Put the beginning on. This is the kind of thing I have to work with. So I have used Ecamm, which Brian uses, 5 times interviewing people around the world since last Saturday night. Now, not problem one. Saturday night rolls, there's a problem. Brian suggests things to do that don't work, but I want to know. No, I don't want it. I want to know why Brian is so bad. But I will assure you this, ladies and gentlemen, I care about you. I'll continue working with. It's like working with Bobo the Wonder Champ, but I'll continue to do this just because I care about you, not about. When, ladies and gentlemen, you heard Brian cough, and I'm going to say this: that's the most goddamn intelligent thing you will hear him do today. He is a cross between two evil men. One is Donald Trump, but Brian doesn't have his sexual attractiveness, and Boris Putin. In fact, if God were, well, if there were a God, if God were to come down now and try to get the three worst men in order to eliminate them from the earth, it would be Putin, Trump, and Weinstein. And I have no idea if he did, third worst, the second worst, and the first worst. It would not surprise me if God, in the middle of this show, were he to do that, if there were a God, there's not. But that he would transport Brian and put one of you, like evil Yoda or Joey or anyone, in his place, so I would have somebody professional to work with. Hey, Brian, how are you?
I hadn't expected us to be laughing this much, because, and I mean that seriously. This a very, very serious day, and Dave has been
I assume
serious.
that's Joey's comment up there.
Yeah, Dave. He
Now,
met me
think
in
about this.
1985.
And Brian, it's not a proper description of Brian today. As you can see, he doesn't have a perm, but he still looks like a clown. So Joey was right there. God help what mess.
I'm not even
Brian's
smoking.
mess,
I'm
the
coughing.
world's
I've had
mess,
a.
Gary.
You know what it
Gary,
was?
put it up there, bud.
I'll tell you what
We haven't
happened.
talked for a while. Give me a call.
Yeah, give him a call.
Not now.
No, now.
I'm working with this, now
But
I'm
listen,
working with this idiot,
Dave,
Brian.
I know what it is, my coughing today. I was out there planting grass seed, and at the very end of the bags that I had, it gets real dusty. And that's what I was breathing in. So,
Well, Brian, we'll start with that. There's an old saying that the greatest optimist is a person who plants a tree which he or she will never see in their lifetime. Now, you're out there planting grass, and, I wouldn't have said this 2 weeks ago. We were in bad shape. But you may be planting grass that your neighbors won't see by the end of the year.
oh, fuck.
Yeah, run the introduction again. Sure.
I'm trying to get it
Sure.
off.
If all else fails,
I don't know why this thing just hangs on here. I
know
don't
why-
get it.
the other thing.
No, I got to
audience
get this
members-
off of here, because every time we do the both of us. Hold on, I know how to do it.
Yeah.
Hold on.
Well, here's what it is. Did you hear that? He basically said, I don't know what he's. It just can't work this shit.
There's something here that's going wrong here. Hold on for a second.
Brian, that would describe everything you do.
Because every time I go back to this, it's going to have that damn thing. Hold on here. Yeah, let's have a tutorial on eCam tonight.
Well, why? You can tell people how not to use it. I mean, I can tell them how to use it.
Yeah, there's got to be a way to get
Christmas.
this off of here. This is ridiculous.
Yeah, there is. Just you shut down and let me do the show.
We can hear you talk slowly for 2 hours. Right. I'll figure it out. I mean,
No, you won't, but okay.
Jesus Christ.
Brian,
You might have to
let's
do the
jump
show.
in.
All right.
I'm assuming we always say you're the cautious pessimist realist, right? And I'm the optimist. But I'm assuming tonight, even you think the world is in great shape. Am I correct?
In some alternate universe, I guess, but not in this one.
Well, what's bothering you? What could be out there that's bothering you this week?
I saw a speech today, which I it harkened me back to Mario Savio's Sproul Hall speech. Not so much the words, but the placement of the words and the intensity. And of course, it was in a different language, but you didn't have to speak Russian to know that this thing was right from the gut. I mean, it came from, like Joe Frazier once said when he knocked down Ali in that first fight, he said that one came from down home, like South Carolina. Well, this came from home from her, and it was strange seeing a Slavic person, the last 40 years on TV. You don't see anybody going off, She went off and did a great job. And I'll be showing that to everybody. And I do want to show like 10 seconds of Savio. We've all seen it before, of course, but well worth seeing that. And it really bothers me because right now, I think we can legitimately say we're kind of in a crisis on so many different levels because we're dealing with like 2 or 3 wars at once. Plus Putin, as you've suggested, Dave, to me privately, he may be really losing it. I mean, he may just be having this Russian leader mentality, or he could be losing it. Foreigners go crazy too. And we could be heading into World War III. Now, you, Dave, would be more appropriate to ask this question because you
Sure.
grew up during the Cuban Missile Crisis. I was there, but I was only 2, so I wouldn't really know what the hell's going on. What similarities can you draw between this?
Okay. It's very simple. You'd have to be a fool not to think there's a possibility the world will end. That starts there. Now, I'll preface what I'm going to say. I was 10 years old in the Cuban Missile Crisis. So I had 10-year-old thinking. It was for anybody who isn't as old as I am, and that's most of our listeners. It was 13 days, basically, in October of 1962, where each day you didn't necessarily know that you would go to bed that night. Okay? Now, a difference. Remember, in 1962, atomic weapons and energy were still in its infancy. 1945, the 2 bombs are dropped in Japan. So there was some, shall we say, really pessimistic things. So I'll answer for myself. At the time, I was going to a private school it was a Christian school. My mother thought that would help. Sorry, Mom, it didn't. I was in 4th grade, and my teacher was just for the story, was a name, named Mrs. Robinson, no relation to the Simon and Garfunkel song. She drove a giant Oldsmobile. Remember, Brian, those times, those cars were huge. And she had this big pocketbook. And the reason I paid attention to that, my parents at the time worked in a town that was about 14 miles away from where I went to school. And I kid you not, I made a plan that, now whether this would have happened or not, the plan didn't, but I kind of assumed you would hear the air raid sirens first. And so I said, when I hear those sirens, I'm going to run up to Mrs. Robinson's desk, open her pocketbook, grab her keys, run out, jump in the Oldsmobile, and drive to where my parents are. And because I really, I don't know, I was just scared of dying. I mean, a little bit, but not much. I just wanted to kind of say goodbye to my parents or be with my parents. So today I talk to, I work, well, most of my projects involve baby boomers. And those who are 70 and above have certain memories. And I've worked with people who still have nightmares over that. So let's dismiss 1962 because we know how it ended. So let's go today. I've talked to people about this. We don't know how this is going to end, but we know how 1962 ended. We know how the the thing with Reagan and Russia in 1980 ended. But this is a point I want to drive home, and I defer to you for your expert in Russian and Russian history. But this is it. This hasn't happened since World War II. This kind of invasion, European continent, and I think many people kind of believed it wouldn't happen. So we have Vladimir Putin, who is cold, who is ruthless, who is calculating, who I believe is an intelligent Trump, okay, which is scarier than Trump himself. But now, if you read the reports in Washington and other places circulating, there's a real question. Is the real Putin still there? Looking at such things as,
Or was he there?
well, he was at
Both of
one
them,
point.
Trump and Putin, are fucked
Yeah,
up.
yeah, but I feared Putin more because Trump is just so erratic and so crazy indirectly, and Putin is so on point. Now, let's just assume for a moment that Putin has all that he had before, except he's not balanced by his intellect. And I think there are two things that could do that. One is that indeed he suffered some kind of trauma, who knows what, that has made him not completely in control of his facilities. But at the same thing, and I want to talk this, and I hope we get some people up there tonight with comments. I don't think Putin really wants to lose this.
I don't think he wants to lose it at all either.
Now, what can he sit down at a peace table and say,
Well, that's what the Prime Minister of Israel supposedly was doing. He's trying to
good.
broker.
What do you got to offer him? What are you going to offer him? He wants Ukraine for any number of reasons. We did talk briefly today, and Brian brought up a great point that I hadn't even really thought about. And Brian, you can expand on this in a few minutes. But the idea, we know that the Russian oligarchs are corrupt as hell. We also know that they have money. We also know they have to have places to store their money. And, the great American hero, who is an American now, the president of the Ukraine, was trying to clean up Ukraine, as you pointed out.
Right.
So is Putin going in because he feels a kinship with the Ukraine, and it was once us our part, we're going to go in there? Possible. Is he going in?
It's a strange way to show kinship.
He wants to make sure that his oligarchs, he and his oligarchs, control the country so they continue to use that. Is he going in because he's a little crazy? Now, even if he's not crazy, what bothers me, and it's great for the Ukraine, it gives us heroes, is they're fighting a hell of a battle against superior forces. And again, I caution everyone, including myself, in the modern age, we don't know what's true, what's false, even what's on social media, how much is framed. But even if only 50% of what's coming out of the Ukraine showing their bravery is true, it's a good fight. But I don't think Putin wants egg on his face, and he's got it already, right? When he compares himself, and he has to the last guy who did this, Adolf Hitler, Hitler's tanks just rolled and rolled and rolled and rolled. His go into their neighbor with what I think it was at the end. What was it? 190,000? I think forces were available. and they go in. Now, we would love, or I would love to know about that fight around the nuclear station. My point being, did they, the Russians, know what they were doing? And they said, we're only going to, damage it, conquer it, take it over, whatever. That may be. But I don't know if it's wise to fire any kind of shells toward a nuclear plant. So, we joke and, we were having, but right now, all my joking is sort of a defense mechanism because I don't know how this is going to turn out. And I don't see, and we'll talk about it later, even if this does somehow resolve, I don't see it boding well. And we'll talk about that later. So, Brian, go ahead. What do you got?
All
on
right.
the
First of all,
What do you
Veg
say?
mentions here about you can conquer Ukraine, but you can, but good luck occupying it. I think, Dave, what you're basically saying when you say I don't know, I think there are a couple things we do know. We know one thing: Ukrainians don't like giving up an inch of their territory, and nor should they. And we know that Putin wants it. So we've got a rock and a hard place. And that's essentially what's happening. We can go into all the whys he did it, NATO, it's democracy, cleaning up the oligarchs and all the bullshit. I really think that once Trump was out of there, that was a signal to Putin that now he can't get what he wants there because Trump was going to,
Right.
he was already playing games with the Zelensky. And thankfully, Zelensky didn't give in, but he was playing games with Zelensky with the javelins. Most obnoxious thing he could have done. I just need one thing first. You're a favor. I'm paraphrasing,
Now, yeah.
When does
that's
a
exactly what
president
he
do
said.
something like? When does anybody do something like that to a president? It's obvious why he wants the javelins because he senses it's coming. The Ukrainians have intelligence forces. They know that there's always a possibility of a Russian invasion. So I think he thought that Trump possibly would win this thing. And Trump was doing everything, of course, he could do to win, even though he lost. And it was it. He didn't want to wait. He didn't want to wait. And now this is just my opinion.
Right.
His advisors probably told him, well, if you're going to do it, it's not a bad time to do it because America's at each other's throats. You have like a
Right.
civil war there. And you'll probably get some support from some Americans because they like you. But again, these are Russians who don't understand the American mentality.
Right.
Just like a friend of mine said, he said, Brian, you've got to accept this. There is a thing called a Russian mentality, Русский менталитет. And there is a definite difference between an American and a Russian mentality. Now, that's not to say that all Russian people are like Putin. But there are enough of them, number one, and they're all used to authoritarianism. I just got a video today from one of my contacts in Arkhangelsk, and she was showing me a video of these interviews with people, and every single one of them, now, not every Russian supports it, but these people were like the Trumpers that we have, and they say the same shit, Dave. They say the same shit. They say, look, I don't want to hear anything. I believe him, and that's it. I'm for him. They're this, they're that. And it starts to sound like, remember, I don't know who the interviewer is, Dave, he's a real funny guy, and he does interviews. I guess he used to work with the Trevor Noah or with...
Yeah.
Yeah, and he'd do the funny interviews, and then these Trumpers would say something really stupid.
Right.
Yeah, I don't think he'd ever do that. Donald Trump is great. So anyway, you start to see this connection. Fuck language. I mean, now that I can understand all the Russians, you see that there's this dummity stuff going on. There's this gene, this stupid gene. And knowing this, where essentially you have these Trumpers, or enough of them, and then you have what we have here, we've got a problem. Plus, again, the Russians probably felt that now was a good time. And it probably is a good time to do it, except they're there seems to be a break toward normalcy in terms of how we deal with Russia. For the exception of you see that Tucker Carlson did an about face. What a piece of shit he is. He apologized for around 30 seconds, and then for 8 minutes he went on this tirade against Kamala Harris. Because number one, she was a strong woman, and number two, she was African American. So there you go. It's really not an apology. So anyway, we're in a horrible, horrible situation, and you have to feel for Biden. He is kind of like Lincoln in the sense that he's in a situation where he may have to make some really big decisions, and he doesn't have full support at home. So True. This is why the anxiety. And I don't want to say, I've lived a good life. Fuck it, it's going to happen. It's going to happen. But I can't say that because there are too many things at stake for other people. I am not to decide that, So anyway, I agree with you. I don't know what happens. I don't think anybody really knows, but there will be an action and there will be a reaction. I did hear this. I heard it at school from one of the RTC guys, and sometimes they get news. By the way, I remember when I was first substituting in 1984 at Cherry Lee's, when they had that. You remember when Mayor Good in Philadelphia dropped some C4 on the Politan Village with the MOVE organization? Folks, if you're not familiar, you look it up, you'll find out about it. But I never forget this kid who's he was involved. His dad was involved in the National Guard, and he said to me, my dad just gave me a call, and he said that they're getting C4, and they actually did use it. And then Wilson Good got in a hell of a lot of trouble, and he never stayed as mayor. So sometimes you hear these things. So anyway, I heard something that we were sending some fighter jets over there, and then I just read CNN, and it said Poland and the United States are discussing giving Ukraine some of our more sophisticated aircraft, which can evade and do what they do. The question is, do you have a pilot who can do it right now? I don't know. But and how does Russia react? Because don't forget, Russia already said now the sanctions to them are considered an act of war.
Well, Putin said that, right? It's confusing because of the Russian 12-hour difference, but I'm going to say yesterday, it might have been today, in terms of that. But he basically said the sanctions the United States and other countries have put on Russia. Notice he speaks like Trump. The difference is that he is kind of Russia. Trump thought he was America. Russia considers that. He didn't say will consider. Russia considers that an act of war. And I was talking to a couple of people today trying to see if they could get in the mind of Putin, because they're all, go in. I said, wait a minute. If you're Putin, if you're a Russian who doesn't hate Putin, do you really? They're not that stupid. They know the sanctions are going to really take that country down. So,
right.
The difference. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I want to just clear this up real clearly. With it says kinky. It says 5 massively wealthy Jewish oligarchs. Know your oligarchs. Haaretz. Yeah, I mean, some are Jewish, but see, here's the thing. Don't assume because they have Jewish ancestry that they're like associated as Jews, because Khodorkovsky was the richest man in Russia. He had Jewish heritage, and Putin hated him, and he put him in a cell, and they had to make deals eventually to get him out. So there is no love between Russian Jews and Putin and vice versa.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, I mean, and many Russians have, a little bit of Jewish blood. They have a little bit of Mongolian blood. They may have even Gypsy blood. I mean, there's so much different blood going around, Viking blood. It's not unusual to say that somebody's part this in Russia. You know what I mean? Even though you might not think of it as a country like ours, where it's our country is definitely not homogenous, but they do have a lot of different ethnic this or that. But just because they're Jewish oligarchs doesn't mean like they're quote unquote Jewish. They could have a grandfather. In fact, by the way, that was why Ukraine, was known for anti-Semitism during the pogroms in the late late 1800s and even during the Revolutionary War in Russia in 1917, because they assumed because Lenin's grandfather supposedly was Jewish,
Right.
that was the cause of it, or because Trotsky was Jewish. But Trotsky was an atheist, and he even said to fellow Jews, he says, "Don't come to me for help. I'm an internationalist." So you have to be so exact when you think of these things. Don't make connections, because all of a sudden you go from here to Illuminati. You know what I mean? And I think that's something we all have to be really careful about. We have to be really, really understanding of the nuance of who's there and what that says. And I don't even think the oligarchs have power over Putin. I think it's the opposite. Putin has power of the oligarchs because he did it to the richest one and made his life miserable for 10 or 15 years.
A couple of things I want to pick up on you said, and not because you said it, not because I believe it, but it is indeed true. Russians have a different mentality, mental outlook, life's view than even other European countries, right?
Right.
I mean, so it's not just the distance from America.
They hated the French Revolution, and that was, it was obvious with Catherine the Great.
And again, I've espoused this theory, I hope I'm wrong, that America may be too vast to really be one country now, just geography, right? Well, look how big Russia is. But the difference is, I think, and I want to hear what you have to say about this, Brian, is, I'm going to use America. Okay, we had people who wouldn't even wear a mask and claiming that's tyranny. Americans need to understand one time in our history in war, if you don't include the Civil War, we were attacked, and that's Pearl Harbor. And if you want to go to 2001, September 11th, when we say the country was attacked, I'm not in any way diminishing the severity or any of the Americans who died, but it was in two cities and a few buildings. Now, it wasn't Russia. And I assume it's not a myth. During the siege of Stalingrad, right now St. Petersburg, I mean, people were eating rats. I mean, there was no food, and they did that. Right. And they would catch them, and they basically were playing the role of the Ukraine now. Mm-hmm. Go away. We're not going to let you do it. Russia has defeated the two most recent European conquerors, Napoleon and Hitler. And they probably would have taken down Alexander the Great if he knew there were a Russia. So they know what it is to be under attack. We don't. You pointed out, and that's true, they believe that Putin is in some sense a god on earth, or the best we're going to get. And
they also believe that democracy is chaos. And that is that's the main thing. I would agree. Arguments. I'm talking about not good conversations with.
No.
I'll just say at least one person in the last 2 years who came from Russia, and they said, I'm saying they, but it was a person. I'm not going to give any idea. Said that though they know that Putin is not a good guy, they need him in Russia because they need order. People will lose this or that, and that's that mentality. And that's, by the way, that I couldn't handle the conversation. And to this day, I don't really speak with this person because I realized that is exactly what we're talking about. That even though they came here, they wanted to get away from it, but they brought their shit with them.
Well, you always do that. The other thing I was thinking about, and this applies to China too. Russia, China were communists, right? Which is the opposite, not the opposite, of capitalism. Then they're not communists now and have adopted sort of a communistic capitalism, if you will. And from what I understand from my limited knowledge of Russia, um, it's like a when you're an individual and getting money, it's like capitalism on steroids, and that's when you get oligarchs, right? And so you've got all these things that we can't in the West figure out. So what are you left with? Another image that'll remain with me. I don't know if it does with anyone else, but I think it's actually the two most recent pictures that have been posted of Putin are two of the most. He's at that giant table, and one is with his generals, and they couldn't hear him, and he couldn't hear them if they shouted, right? Well, what's that? And there was another one with a group, and I think either he really is somewhat isolated by himself. And remember, that's one of the things that we had a problem with Trump with. Uh, First, Trump was isolated, right? And then when nobody would deal with him, the wackos came in, the Roger Stones, Steve, and he throws them out. Why would Roger Stone come back? We got pardoned, but why would Steve Bannon come back? Why would any of this? And it's probably the same thing in Russia. By the same token, it's the same group that I was part of in 1962. I feel most for those really aware 5-year-olds to the 18-year-olds. I'm using that arbitrarily. Can you imagine? And I can, because I was there. I don't have to imagine. I just go back. And you mentioned about living this life. This month I turned 70. Big whoop. But I've had 70 years on this planet. My granddaughter has had, 14, 13 in a month or two. My grandson is 12, will be 13 in May, and it works all the way down. And I've talked to my grandchildren, and tried to, you can't just say there's nothing to worry about. It's not the boogeyman, but you have to try to put it in perspective. But, they're seeing the pictures, and they don't really have the mindset to understand that you have to wait. So in a way, Putin has accomplished part of what he may have wanted to do, but because of the bravery and heroic actions of the Ukrainian, he didn't get it all. And now it's here's the question, not a question to be answered, but I think it's the one that'll dictate. What does Putin do when his plans don't work out the way he was told they would, or the way he believed they do? And
did you see him challenge his director of, I don't know, kind of like the CIA director of,
right? Oh yeah,
and he got really pissed at him. He said, "Well, speak plainly. Tell me exactly what you want." And he intimidated him. He didn't say speak openly. He said speak directly. Tell me what you're trying to say before I cut your head off. That kind of thing.
Well, look, as bad as Donald Trump was, and he's the worst. There's nobody even close. I thought Nixon was the worst, but no. I mean, Trump took that mantle, if you will.
Let's save this one too. I think that's an important question for us to discuss.
Yeah, Veg. Okay, Brian, let's play a little game, and I don't mean to diminish this, but let's go back to Hitler. Some of his generals plotted right against him
when they were losing. Yes.
Yes, and
when they could see what was going to happen
historically, but they didn't succeed. Putin will have people, because of who he is, who he represents, what he can promise, that will protect him till their last breath.
Right.
So it's a question of how many generals. We had numerous talks on this show and others, and I believed, and I was right this time, just luckily right, that our military would hold, right? And it did. But that doesn't mean every military will hold. And again, we're like, you said it. I just think we all have to keep this in mind. No matter how we look at this situation, we're looking at it with an American Western eyes.
Right.
And what we think to be true, what we believe to be true about human nature, what we want to be true, doesn't necessarily apply in Russia. And it may, even if it did, and it doesn't, it might not apply to Putin. Is he a caged, wounded animal? You know, who's he playing to?
The only way you could know in this country what he's going to do is to actually be able to be inside the Kremlin somehow, hear what he's saying, if that in fact is exactly what he's saying.
Who's he telling the truth to? I mean,
Right.
you know, and it's just kind of.
I mean, we don't. There's no way we can know, obviously.
No.
But we.
Well,
like
we
you
know
say,
when he acts.
We've said this though. We certainly can control our own behavior, and I think that from that angle, you know, Biden's done the right thing. If anything, Trump blew it. He should have had them in NATO earlier.
Well, let's go ahead. Let's dismiss one comment that's out there. It's absurd. It's perverse. It's wrong. Not wrong in the front end, but wrong in the back end. And there are numerous people who are saying this and believe it. If Trump were still the president, this wouldn't be happening.
It's so easy to say. You know?
No, it's so easy to say in the front end. Trump loved Putin. He loves him, whether he wants to be him, whether they have a bromance. He might have let him go into the Ukraine, right? I mean, we don't know. But the fact is, if that's what he did, he sold out America. So why wouldn't he sell out NATO? What would he care about? And Putin offered, I'm laughing, but if Putin said, we don't know what the relationship it is between Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin. Most people, and there's some logic to that, think that Putin has stuff on Trump. Stuff that happened before the presidency, right? The money laundering, whatever. But let's suppose for a minute that Donald Trump does really like Putin. We know that Donald Trump likes Donald Trump. And we know that Donald Trump likes Donald Trump better than his country. And maybe the only person that Donald Trump has ever considered listening to is Ivanka. And we know from pretty reliable, well, now might even be testimony, we don't know, that Ivanka kind of begged him, said, Dad, don't do this thing on January 6th. You know, get out of this. So he didn't listen to him then. So, and we have people like Tucker Carlson and Fox News. We have Donald Trump, whom people follow. I'll talk a little bit later about the almost comical threat we're facing here in Washington, D.C. this weekend. But, man.
Well, we got a lot of things here, Dave, that I do want to show that video. First, I want to just
do
begin
that
with
now,
some
can you? I mean,
yeah, I will. I just
haven't seen it.
I am going to let me first.
And just for everybody out there, I don't understand Russian, but you said something that really strikes as me as a communicator. I don't understand German, but I know that Hitler was I hate to use the word dynamic, but I'm going to use it. I mean, Hitler commanded your attention when he spoke, right?
Right.
Martin Luther King, complete opposite, commanded your attention. So you can tell a lot, even if you don't know by the language.
Right.
We'll see a lot of what this woman
right.
is saying and telling the truth and her emotion. And sometimes that's more important than knowing the words.
And I will put in the translation that I did.
Right.
It might get too cluttered though, so I may have to do a little bit at a time. But I want to just show people
Yeah,
here.
I just want to see
This just
some of
happened
it. I haven't
today. A WNBA All-Star was arrested. She had a little bit of oil, and the dog sniffed it in Russia. So Here's another thing they're doing here. Maybe they would have.
So let me follow. I wasn't aware of this either. She was over there on a.
She arrived from New
junket.
York. She went to
play?
Sheremetyevo Airport, which is there's a couple airports in Moscow, but this is the big one. And the dog smelled something, and they said there was something like hash oil or cannabis oil that they found.
Whether it did or didn't doesn't matter. I mean, you know,
Right. Well,
they said it did, so it did.
They're going to play
My
games with
question
this
is-
thing here.
My question is, and I don't know this, I wouldn't go to Russia or the Ukraine right now for any reason. So I'll have to follow up on that. I just want to see what she was doing there. Was it a personal thing? Was it a team thing? And I don't know. But if it was, nobody should go to either country right now.
All right, let me see if I'm just going to go to the chat here for a second, and I'm going to attempt to put in the text. And if I can, I can. If Ecamm doesn't let me do it, I'm not going to do it. So, well, you know, I'll tell you what I'll do first. I think this might be.
Play just a little, if you
I'll
would.
play it, and then I'll tell you afterwards what
Yeah,
she said. But I just want you to see it.
the
Okay.
way I
So
would
here
have
we go.
seen it anyway.
Стреляны жилые дома. Умерло 20 детей и сотни взрослых. Тысячи ранены. Обстрелы ведутся из ракетных установок. Сегодня разослали по школам методички, и вашим детям с 1 марта рассказывать будут, как оправдывать действия великого Владимира Путина, которые он сотворил в Украине, которая не существовала. Посмотрите на ваших детей и посмотрите на наших детей.
Работа с детьми в российских школах ведется уже один из ярких...
Now I'm going to stop for a second, Dave.
Yeah.
Okay? So, basically, this is in 3 parts. She makes a speech saying that Putin is your dictator is a vile monster. He has killed 20 children, injured hundreds of adults. He has sent rocket launchers against residential homes. And then it goes to this. Okay, there's a few other things she said. I can't really remember at this moment. But she,
Go ahead.
but then it went to this. This was a commercial or a video that was made in 2017 with kids saying that they are going to support Putin all the way in the final battle. And they use this to drown out demonstrations. So if there were a demonstration somewhere, they would put up a video or have a really loud sound of these kids saying that they'll fight for Putin. And these are just young kids here. And they use this the first few days of the invasion. So they're using this, and it's really disgusting to see. She also mentioned that, you know, I mentioned to you, Dave, with the curriculum, that they were sending manuals to the teachers to explain to the students how we can justify this war. You know what I mean? So they're telling them what to say. So you'll see this little part of the clip here, and then we'll go back to what
примеров
Я думаю,
клип, который записала депутатка «Свободной России» Анна Кувычка вместе с группой школьников. Дети в форме полицейских
Again, they're
поют
using
песню
kids
о
here.
том, что готовы идти за Путиным в последний бой.
And again, they're talking about Putin. They're gonna, he's our number one commander. We are with
Был
you.
записан еще в 2017 году.
They're just
Силовики не раз
explaining how in
включали ее на
2017
митингах,
this was
чтобы заглушить
used
толпу демонстрантов.
to
Но вот в
drown out
школах ее распространять начали в первые
protesters,
дни полномасштабного
demonstrators.
вторжения России в Украину. В одной из оренбургских гимназий разгорелся скандал после того, как учительница этот клип опубликовала в родительском чате.
Наталья Владимировна, ради
Okay,
бога,
now we're
удалите
going to
это
come up
отсюда.
on
Я вас прошу.
the
Пропагандируйте
last
этот
part.
бред
There's 3 parts here, ladies and gentlemen, and we're going to come back to the actress.
в другом месте.
And she's really going to go off now. She's going to say, I'm going to tell you what she said first. I'm trying to remember all the things she said. She said, basically, you know, how can you sit here and do nothing? That you're going to suffocate yourself with shame because you cannot look your kids in the eye. You have to look your kids in the eye and tell them the truth. You have to go out in the streets. And she said, in fucking Moscow. Go out in the streets in fucking Moscow. Get 1 million of them. You're all afraid to go be put in the paddy wagons. You're afraid of 1,000 police. Well, then she said, you put 1 million of you fuckers out there, and then you're going to be the ones that can put him away and demolish Putin. But you go out there with millions. You go right in the streets of Moscow. And she said, but you don't want to do it yet. You've got to do this. We dealt with it in 2014. Now you go out and deal with it, okay? So you'll watch her, and this is basically what she said.
Не трогайте светлую голову моего ребенка.
Вы боитесь
You're afraid
тысяч полицейских.
of 1,000
Если
policemen.
вас выйдет миллион
Every beep
на
is a
улице
fuck
грёбаной
word.
Москвы,
Yeah, right.
вы еще сможете продолжать жить и смотреть в глаза своим детям.
Look
Вы
at your kids in the
сможете
eye.
дышать этим воздухом, понимаете? Они задохнутся от позора.
You're going to
Вы
suffocate
должны
from
выйти
shame.
на улице, только вы можете снести
Only you can
одного
take the power from this guy.
человека, который на
One
сошел
motherfucker.
с ума. Просто сошел с ума.
He simply is gone fucking
Убивает
insane.
мой народ,
Killed my
моих
people.
детей,
Killed my
наших
children.
детей.
Our mothers.
Я говорю по-русски всю
I
свою
speak
жизнь.
in Russian
Видите?
all my life.
Жива. Наши нацисты меня не убили. и
Our
не
our
трогали.
Nazis didn't kill
А
me
вы
and didn't even
меня
touch me.
убиваете.
You've killed me.
Выходите на улицы.
Go out in the
Миллион
streets.
человек справится с горсткой полицейских.
Deal with it.
Справится.
Deal with it.
Мы справились в 2014 году.
We deal with it in
Вы
2014. You deal with it. Okay, anyway, that to me, I hope you get the gist of what I was saying there in terms of the intensity level, Dave. It was really great. It was definitely a Mario Savio to me. I felt it in the same way that I felt the Mario, except there's no people, you'd actually
Right.
hear clapping.
Well, I want to respond to that when you finish. Go ahead.
But she's basically pointing the finger at the Russian person who sits on their ass at home, and they can't get outside of that. But again, that's that mentality. Some actually agree with it that, we'll have chaos, and I don't want to go out in the street and cause it because I know I'm going to be sent away. But she's saying you've got to put millions of you out there. And then they can't stop you. They can't stop millions. And it has to be done in Moscow because that's where you have millions that can do it. And where better but Moscow, maybe St. Petersburg.
True. Well, I agree with the fact it's powerful. How many times can I say that I've been so impressed with the Ukrainian response? Mm-hmm.
And she is I don't know if she's famous, but I know she's an actress.
That's what I wanted. Well, actually, I wrote that down.
Right.
So the first thing is she's right by saying, well, let me rephrase this. Only you can do it. I mean, which is true. If they support Putin through everything, he remains, right? Unless he's killed. But you have to do it. It's not. It's like once my understanding, and I think it's true. Once you take to the streets in Moscow or anywhere in Russia, you better be prepared to die.
And I've seen that in 1991.
Right.
5 people tried to stand in front of the tanks, and 5 people died.
Right.
They ran them
So
right
that's
over.
one thing. Again, I understand. It's hard to tell people. You go out there and you may or may not win your cause, but you're not going to be able to see the victory. You have to be pretty committed, right? I mean,
Right.
it's happened. We saw it with the civil rights movement. We've seen it with other movements in America, but it's still different. Because yes, police have killed Black Americans, and 4 young people were killed at Kent State. But that's nothing compared to what would happen to those in Russia. The second thing, and I'm always fascinated with this word in the 21st century, shame. If I were to sit back and say, okay, on my 70 years on the planet, and Gary, if you're still listening, I'm not speaking to you, but I know we're contemporaries in age, so I'd really be interested in what you think. Shame has been a diminished concept, right? Donald Trump should be ashamed when he gets up in the morning till he goes to bed at night. I don't think he understands it. I don't think it enters into his frame of reference. And unfortunately, we're beginning to reinforce it. Look at some of the TV in America. And I just finished watching Inventing Anna, which is about a 25-year-old who actually used a Russian background to defraud the biggest banks, her best friends, and she had no shame.
All right, Dave, stop. Okay,
yes.
Evil Yoda, I mentioned this to, briefly in my No, you're not gonna, I can put on videos of a zillion Ukrainians. They want to fight. They want to fight and die. It's not a question of Zelensky putting them in jeopardy. They want it. They would have done it without Zelensky. They want it. They will not leave. In fact, you've got Ukrainians coming back in. Usyk, the Klitschko brother. No. This is for sure.
I'm going to take it that, and then I want to finish my last point. But I want to take that in a different direction. And I spend a lot of time, probably places I shouldn't be, on not the dark web, but I laugh at the Trumper sites, right? Different sites. And one of the things that they're saying is the Second Amendment. People are saying, see, we need these guns. First of all, it's not comparing anything that could happen, but because you're looking at an outside invasion, and they're talking about an inside, invasion by American troops. Number two, though, and you might know more than this, but I got the impression that the Ukrainians did not have these guns hanging on their wall, right? They were supplied to them. So that's not the same situation as somebody who wants to stockpile it in their house so their neighbor, their kid can get killed. And it's just this way. I want to come back to that shame just to finish it. One of the biggest deterrents to bad behavior, whether you're a child or whether you're Donald Trump or Vladimir Putin, used to be for world leaders shame. That weapon is gone, right?
Right.
It's
in this
gone
country. It's gone. Well, at least with Republicans, it is.
No, it's gone from the public. It's gone. Well, let's look at. I love to blame Republicans for everything, but I don't think Bill Clinton had any shame about getting a blowjob in the White House. Now, it's not. You don't equate that to what Trump did, or
right.
But I don't think Hillary.
Because it was so stupid. Why would a guy who you reach the pinnacle?
Because
and I need a blowjob, and meanwhile there's my cabinet near me.
We may look at Bill Clinton, this president of the United States, but Bill Clinton in his mind is still that fat, overweight band boy in high school that couldn't get a girl to save his ass. So some people get corrupted by the power of money, some by the power of power.
You don't bring your shit to work, though.
Well, no, but power is an aphrodisiac, man.
Yeah, I mean, I get that. I get that.
It.
And Putin's a perfect example.
Last week's show, or somewhere, I don't even know if it's on this show, Bill Cosby came up, and I said again as a joke, but I said, I would have loved to have been Bill Cosby's wingman and paid by Bill for every good looking woman I could supply him willingly, right? But he didn't do that. It was a sickness, it was an illness. It's like rape is not about sex, it's about power and violence and misogyny. You know, the sex act is really just tangential. So, again, unfortunately, power corrupts, absolute power corrupts, absolutely. Not always true, but close. And then the last question you kind of answered, who is she? And I'm not worried about who she is, to see the power. But, okay, in America, let me think of someone, not someone who's, okay, Jane Goodall, right? Who would inspire more of a reaction? Jane Goodall speaking or Beyonce?
Oh, that's
Answer's
pretty
clear.
easy. Yeah.
Yeah. So my point is, if she, unfortunately, that's another problem we have today. It's not about the message. It's about what status is the person who's
Right.
speaking it. The Kardashians have way too much weight in the world. And the list goes on and on and on. Let's see what Kinky has here. Aphrodisiac few. That's exactly right. And again, this is my simplistic idea of people get power. Some want power for money. Some want power for control. Some want power for sex. It's all combinations, right? But the idea of it is, if you have power, you're going to use it either for good or for bad. And the only thing I want to say about nuclear weapons tonight is, as long as countries have them, and I don't see them giving it up. In fact, I actually see after this, and maybe next week we'll talk a little bit about that, I actually see a new arms race, however this turns out, if there is an after, right? Which
I don't know how much more weaponry you can create. There's just so much out there.
No, I'm talking about other countries wanting it. You know, and just either things like dirty bombs and, you know, things that terrorists, I mean, what people are saying now, Brian, and I may be wrong, but I don't think so. They're seeing the power of using the threat of using nuclear weapons that someone has. We haven't heard that for a while, right? Mm-hmm. We knew it was there, but nobody was exercising this. The last time, and that's another bad thing about the lies of the Iraqi incursion and all that, was it turned out to be nothing. Well, Russian weaponry is not nothing. They have it and they can use it. Did you see, and again, this is not supposed to be this kind of show, but it just, they're actually a form of, you know, thermodynamic, the flamethrower cannons that are on those trucks. My God.
I just want to say one thing, Dave, and this, everybody.
What is it? Thermobaric. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, they're horrible.
Right.
You have to feel sorry for a Russian tankist who, you know, is a young kid. They're 18. I know you do.
Gotcha.
This is the problem. Putin is not only killing Ukrainians, but he's killing Russians. Now,
right.
Fewer Russians are going to die than Ukrainians, but there are a lot of kids there who don't know any better, and they're getting thrown into this shit, and they're going to die. And by the way, they are not bringing the bodies back. They are having burials without any bodies in the ground. They are having these portable crematoriums. So this isn't even fair to the mothers in Russia. But because they control the media, only we know about it. You got
right.
Twitter shut down. You've got YouTube shut down. Facebook. You know, this is what happens when you control the press. And Dave can speak to that anytime.
You just spoke as well. I'm going to submit, not because I was a journalist for a long time, but if you include television, You can even exclude print and social media as a news source. The media today has more power than it's ever had, right? Even though everybody hated what they're speaking of, they say I hate the press. I hate the press that doesn't report it the way I want it, right? They don't hate the press. Thomas Jefferson's great quote. Let me try to do this right. Were it left to me to decide whether to have a government without without newspapers or newspapers without government, I would not hesitate a moment to choose the latter. Bullshit. He hated the press that attacked him. He loved the press that he controlled. So, the idea of it is, and last week we spent a lot of time with Guy, who I think is an impressive. I don't really care what anybody else says; they can make their own opinions, because that's real. Okay. Now tonight, we're supposed to be a political show initially, but it's all intertwined. Brian, you kind of alluded to that in the beginning. Again, I don't want to be a fear monger or Chicken Little. Okay, we're still in the pandemic, correct?
Correct.
We seem to be moving out. The last variant, Omicron, was not as bad as the other in terms of death and destruction. We've got some people vaccinated. Many people, I'm surprised, not more, are boosted who are vaccinated. It's a whole different world, right? But if this is true, and I assume it is, 35% of the Ukraine is vaccinated, give or take. Now they're gonna be reduced to horrible conditions in country and refugee camps somewhere else, which is breeding ground for disease, even if this wasn't. Now, is that the place where another variant is going to emerge? And if it does, will it follow the pattern of Omicron, or will it be something else? So now let's look at the environment. You hit that damn nuclear plant, which I'm sorry, anybody who doesn't think that was a possibility is incredibly naive.
Yeah, we're not done with that yet.
What?
We're not done with those. There's 6 locations, and each one might have 4 or something like that.
Well, no, but this was the largest in Europe,
right?
The one that they were firing at. Well, okay, you can say. I mean, Putin said we have the best rocket fires in the world. Okay, but there's always an errant rocket. There's always an errant bomb, or there might be someone on the Ukrainian side who says, hey, if we blow this thing now, we'll lose it, at the end, but let's take out it's just so much, and they're interrelated. And then let's bring it back to what this is supposed to be, a political show. Yes, we're slowly maybe coming together, but if we have time tonight, I have 2 stories breaking in Washington we'll talk about that may not make us seem so that we're coming together. So let's see what Max has to say here. Why we have so much war, because we have to feed the military industrial, and of course it went off. Can you put it back up just for a second?
I'm sorry.
No, it's the timing. It's not you. I complain about when you're creepy, but not especially those making the weapons. True. What I find ironic from a political standpoint, do you know who first spoke out about the dangers of the military industrial complex? Do you know who that was, Brian?
Yes, I think I do.
Who?
Was that Dwight Eisenhower?
It was. And you show me a more militarily grounded American than Dwight. And his message was he was a Republican when Republicans were different. And he's absolutely right. Look at the Iraqi war. Look at this. Has there ever been a war that didn't have one of 2 causes to it? An economic cause, right? Mm-hmm. Or a religious cause. And all
we will enter this one too below. I mean, this
Well,
Because there are a-holes at the
I
bottom,
like that.
too, coming up that push these people.
I think now let's bring it back to America. I hope.
Do we blame Trump for being Trump?
No.
No.
Okay. You can do whatever you want. Here's again. I'm gonna use one incident in my life, but I think it applies. For those who don't know, I grew up and lived in the same town where Brian now resides. We're both Jersey boys, born and bred, but he was in the rich section and gave it all up to come to my poor rural agrarian area surrounds this city. But there was a judge there who was a Republican, and he was bright. Damn, he was intelligent. And we were talking one time, and he had this real deep, kind of, or he was calling me Price. He actually cited me for contempt one time when I was a reporter. But anyway, Price, this educational system's messed up. I could really help it out, but I'm not going to run. I said, well, why not, Judge? He said, and he mentioned a guy, so I'll just mention this guy's name. Nobody knows. He says, because the people elected Jack Stanton and his four stooges. And that was a football board, right? And at a board of education, the one you work for now, I work for, I was there as a reporter when Jack Stanton stopped a presentation and said it was about language arts and tests. And he honestly said this with a straight face. What exactly does this have to do with our football program? So what am I trying to tie in here? This was in the 70s. In his day, it's even the worse. The best and the brightest no longer run. They don't. And so you're taking from the C team, the D team, right? And if you're a good person in Russia, can you even be the ruler? They don't elect him, right? It's a power struggle. So to answer that question, I think it's twofold. I think the worst seek power often, and the best don't want it. An analogy, Brian, I would say, and you and I've talked about this, so it's in our world. I want everyone to think about it in their world. The best teachers never go into administration. And many administrators go into school administration for the wrong reasons. I think it's the same in politics, to me, and getting worse. I mean, again, this can't be stressed enough. In America, the Republicans are not worried about the Democrats. I'm talking about those who run. They're terrified of being outrighted. And the crazy wing is pushing them more and more and more to side with them, because take anybody's in the Senate. If they want to do some good and they're a Republican, the first thing they have to do is get elected, right? And if it takes moving to the right to get elected.
Dave, I'll say this, though. With all of the events happening in the last week and a half, it has, blunted the bullshit. And I think that, if this thing, and I don't want it to get worse, but if it does get worse, then
all right,
it'll just marginalize these people temporarily, at least.
Here's what we got. Do you think it's changed Mitch McConnell at all? I do not.
Changed Mike Pence a little bit.
Well, I'm going to not argue with you. I'm going to say that Mike Pence has nowhere else to go.
And it was probably a good move for him. He's just a year too late.
Dead in Trump's world.
Right.
Now, my problem is Mike Pence betrayed his God and betrayed his country by not speaking up earlier. Now you got, and I hate to disparage people's physical attributes, so I'm not going to use the word fat and dumpy. But
we don't body shame.
You've got Bill Barr coming out, and you've got Chris Christie coming out. Bill, let me ask you a question, Bill. You're writing this book, and you're making whatever you're making. Why the hell didn't you say that when you were there? Chris Christie, oh, now Trump's bad?
Right.
Why didn't you say it then? So, and to your favorite politician, Senator the gentleman from South Carolina, Lindsey Graham.
Hooked.
When you're bad, even when you're on the right side, you're bad. Is it really appropriate for U.S. Senate to call for the assassination of a leader? I don't know. You can make an argument it's not. Not saying you don't wish it, not saying you don't agree to do it, but to put that in the air, do you really do it? I don't know.
I don't know.
So I'm not impressed, Brian, by any movement of the Republicans because I do not see it as lasting. I'll take it. Let's bring it down on the American people. I know one thing, gas prices are going to go up. That's a given. You got two things.
And people complain about that. I still can't believe that they're complaining.
Doesn't
while
matter,
people are dying.
Brian.
Who gives a fuck?
It doesn't.
It actually is pretty good on two things, two fronts. Again, it's going to help with alternative fuels and vehicles. Why not? I'm getting sick of this oil thing.
But Brian, you're using logic and sense. It doesn't apply here. No matter what is the cause, who are they going to blame? In America, who are they going to blame?
We're going to welcome Kevin Wheeler, Dave from Canada. He's here. He had messaged me, and I gave him a link. So, Kevin, good to see you.
Cool, Kevin.
Okay.
I don't know you, but if you're friends of
You
Brian,
may have been on once with him a long time ago on the Real
I
Report.
could have been.
It might have been a long time ago.
That's
Maybe
in
not.
That's in another world. No,
Right.
Brian, I want to get back to that point. This idea of who they're going to blame. I can tell you who they're going to blame. Joe Biden. But it doesn't
Right.
stop there. They're going to blame Joe Biden and the Democrats.
Right, and knowing that he's not at fault. They know he's not at fault, but they're going
I
to
don't
do it
know if
anyway.
They know. I think they really believe. Some of them really believe.
Then you know what? Then we're going to have World War III because we've got that crap over there with people just
we
like
are,
that,
maybe.
and we got this.
Brian, I don't know. But my point is they don't use logic.
Hi, Lisa.
And let me jump on a story that I've been working on here. It's by your favorite group, Brian. I know you secretly love these guys. There are people that you like dealing with and talking about.
Uh-oh, who do I like now?
It's a group. I think you have the utmost respect.
Is this King
for.
Crimson or something? I don't know.
It's close. It has a Q in it. And that
Q?
would be QAnon. Would you like to
Okay.
hear? I spent
Kind of
some
like
time-
King Crimson a little better. I think Robert
I
Fripp
did spend
is.
some time.
pretty cool.
You have to be careful. You go on their websites that I want to see. Here is the theory now, Brian, directly from a couple of the leaders of QAnon. And the thing to remember, ladies and gentlemen, they have 400,000 members or whatever they have, and they have 82 leaders. There is no one spokesperson. They fill a vacuum. So you've got the QAnon down there in Dallas, still waiting for the second coming of Kennedy or somebody. So let me find some things here. Okay. Of course, they live and die by conspiracies, and what conspiracies can't be proven as true or untrue to a person who believes in it. We call them conspiracy theories, correct? They call it truth. So here is a couple of the truths that are circulating out.
I don't know. Is that Lisa or it might be Kevin using Lisa's account. I don't know, Kev. So
Well, anyway. Okay, here we are. Here's one leader. His name is Pastor, notice, Johnny Enlow, is considered one of the leading spiritual leaders amongst some Q types. Now, is that even an oxymoron, spiritual and Q together? Here is what he is saying. Enlow continues to tell his followers that he continues to have visions of Trump, quote, seated on a throne of gold with a golden scepter. He also has a golden crown on his head. But there's another faction. This is what they're saying. Again, happens to be a pastor. I'm not picking on pastors, but think about it. If you're conditioned to think of the pastor as a man of truth, And he's a man of the devil rather than a man of a God that doesn't exist. It's pretty dangerous. This pastor describes Vladimir Putin as a quote key chess player of God. Think about that. And he says that Russia is a better place to live than America right now. And then he follows with USA, USA, USA. And here is one of his tweets, which, wow, maybe I shouldn't be there looking on those, but I do. Let's see. Oh, I like this one. It's much more dangerous to be a citizen in this country than it is in Russia right now because of who we have in our government. Now, how many people? I don't know, but enough to make a difference, enough to push the Republican Party far right, more far right than they are now. And Mitt Romney, who, is acknowledged to be every 700th decision, he does the right thing. He called the woman that you would leave your wife for, you've told me on numerous occasions, Marjorie Taylor Greene, and the dentist that you want to work on your teeth, Paul Gosar, who spoke at a
Why are they the two biggest assholes? Paul Gosar and Jeff Van Drew are dentists.
They did too much of the laughing gas.
Right, something like that.
But no, Mitt comes out and he says, basically, it was kind of funny, actually. It's a line from, I think, a movie somewhere. Well, it's obvious I work, I work with morons, but it's obviously morons are with my group or something. Well, right now, Brian, if you look at who's raised more money, Marcia Taylor Greene or Mitt Romney, a man who ran for president, who's been a governor of the state of Massachusetts. If you talk to people there, they say he was not a bad governor. He also should be looked at as someone who was one of the most gracious losers of all time, with his speech. Marcia Taylor Greene is outraising him. Explain that one to me. And you can. The grassroots are funding her, and all you need is one or two of the billionaires that are going to ride her, not literally, but figuratively, to the power that they want.
Have you seen this around, Dave?
That's the Mother Mary carrying what?
It's a javelin. It's called the St. Javelin. That's the one missile that's, I think the Ukrainians would have been in real trouble without the javelins and the stingers. So, if Trump had helped them out a little sooner and had more there, I think better shot. But they're holding up. They're going to lose. But then again, the insurgency will continue, and they're really hurting the Russians. And this missile's been great. Not that I'm into warfare. I'm not. But no, I am into people defending themselves when they're attacked.
There's two things that are stopping the tanks right now from rolling in. And those of us who, I wasn't alive in World War II, but that blitzkrieg of the German tanks is what stays in your memory, right? Fastest things on two wheels, unbeatable. One of the greatest generals the world has ever known, Rommel. He was a tank commander, and he was brilliant. So it's in my mind, and I think it would be in many people's minds from that period. But there are two things that'll stop tanks, and they're both happening in Ukraine. One are the javelins. Well, there's actually three. I forgot the third. One are the javelins, right? The second is these brave Ukrainians. Think about this. It boggles my mind. We couldn't get factories to switch to making masks in America no matter how we tried, right?
Right.
Initially. In Ukraine, within hours of the invasion, one of the largest liquor manufacturers, right, distilleries, switched from making alcohol to making Molotov cocktails. and they actually had a new label on it about like "fuck you, Russians," "fuck you, fuck you, Putin." And there have been reports of tanks being attacked by 40 Molotov cocktails thrown by everybody from soldiers to grandmothers. And that'll slow a tank down.
Right.
One Molotov, we watch too many movies, No, one Molotov backs up. 40 might do some damage.
Right.
And then the third is the big one, and this is huge. I don't know, but I'm very glad. You don't send tanks in without fuel trucks behind them, and the Russians didn't. There are examples all over the country of tanks running out. Now, you mentioned the young soldiers. Soldiers, maybe they don't mind dying. I mean, if they're in the, but they don't want to die stupidly. So they come out and they surrender. Did you see
Not when
the
they're
one?
told that it's just an exercise or a drill,
Well,
and then all of a sudden you're going to die for that.
Did you see the one? And again, we have to be careful, propaganda, etc. But one of those young tank guys were brought in by the community, fed, and one of them brought out a small, like a tablet, so he could contact his mother.
That's
back
very
in
nice.
Russia.
Let
Very
me
nice, but very effective.
let me go to Kevin here, and then I want to show you another video, folks, if you don't mind. A short video with Tyson Fury. But Kevin, it says here, answer me a question, Brian. If Ukraine was in NATO, Putin would not move on them.
That's an excellent
The point
question.
is that, Kev, is that just by design with NATO would react. They have to if they're attacked. So if Ukraine had been in NATO, they would have attacked, which means that Putin might not have attacked because he knew that just by the design of the organization, they would come in. And again, why didn't Trump let them in? I have no idea. Again, I have my suspicions that Trump was involved in the dirty dealings of oligarchs, Russian oligarchs in Ukraine. Again, Zelensky cleans it up, and that's that. So my point is, I think I would look at it from NATO point of view. Who knows what Putin would really do? But he does have the nuclear weapon. He could still do that all the time. But anybody
I
who has
wonder,
nuclear weapons can do that.
I'm wondering also if this wouldn't factor into the decision. Ukraine did make overtures to join NATO, right?
Correct.
If NATO were to accept them in, there would still be a period where they're not, and maybe some NATO countries were worried that would provoke the attack that happened. Now, I don't know that. I mean, because it doesn't make sense to me on a lot of levels why.
Well, they were something. They were part of the EU.
But that's fragmented now because
Right.
that was an economic consideration. NATO is the military grouping. And it's a joke and it's funny, but it's true. I'm sure you've seen the memes out there. And I'm going to use the dirty version just because I like it. You know, if something's fucking wrong with you, if you can make Switzerland take sides.
Right.
They haven't taken sides ever. And they don't take sides.
Well, not publicly, but a lot of people. Well, not a
No.
lot, but there are
We-
historians who think that during World War II, the early part, they were with
they
Germany.
Take sides.
Yeah.
I'm talking about publicly. They take the side of Money. It's the Cayman Islands of Europe, right? The bankers and they hide their. But it is. I mean, it's just. And we just when we talk briefly today, I also think Poland, Hungary, they remember what it's like to be under Russian control, and I know that Ukraine issued. If you feel like fighting for us, please come. Right.
And by the way,
They are-
can I mention this with Kevin?
Oh,
and
yeah.
actually, all of our Canadian fans out here, because was it Christina Freeland is her name? She is Ukrainian, speaks Russian and Ukrainian, as far as I know. Behind the scenes, with all the military movements, Canada's been like right there, quietly, really backing Ukraine with military weaponry. They've really come through, and they're a smaller country, but they're usually the first on the beaches, if you know what I mean. So they'll do it, and I have a feeling that I don't want to call her Christina because I don't know her. She is in that circle around Trudeau, that she's had some influence. I think, quite frankly, she's going to be president of that country in the next 10 years or so. I have a feeling. I just
rather than one of those truckers on the bridge, you don't think they'll become?
Oh yeah. Well, let me show you first
One
Tyson
thing
Fury.
before you do this, Brian, just one thing, if I could, and then we can end the sport. You mentioned earlier, and I think you were spot on, about a difference between Russian thinking and Western thinking. There's a difference between communist thinking and democracy thinking. And right now, all of us in the West are going, yay, 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 yay. We're going to economically bring Russia to its knees. But there's a problem with that theory. Do you know who's not involved in the boycott in any way?
China.
And India.
Well, yeah, that's a real problem because that's 3 billion people right there.
Do you realize if just China and Putin, if just China and India agree to take Russian oil, they could almost match all of that going out around the world. So we have to play that out. Now, I'm not downplaying. It's a unity. It's great. It is hurting. But the problem becomes, yeah, we're hurting Putin. Yeah, we're hurting Russia. But we're hurting everybody in Russia, the bad and the good. You have to do it. It's
Right,
better
you have to
than
do
war.
it. You have to do it.
I know, but it's just, go ahead, Brian.
Another, before I put Tyson, as I said I was going to put Tyson Fury on. Another Canadian comment I think is kind of interesting, only because I played hockey up there with my brother there, Kevin, in Kingston. During the COVID crisis, you could look at the various arenas around North America, and it was the Canadian ones that really shut off everything. And that's kind of interesting because if you think about it, that's the national sport in Canada. For the exception of Finland, Canada's the only sport where hockey is the national sport. But as much as hockey means a lot to the country, let's not forget they will do the right thing, because what matters most in Canada, and I'm not trying to throw bouquets at Canada, they will do the right thing. Hockey will mean nothing to them when it comes to doing the right thing, So they have had a history of, whether it's in wars or whatever, of we can give this up right now if we have to, and that's the interesting thing with Canada. I say that now because I know they're heavily involved with sending weapons and weaponry and training and that kind of thing.
And I want to ask all of our listeners and every American tonight, in the sound of my voice, or here's it later, do you, each individual, believe America will do that? I do not.
And that's really, really interesting. Anyway, we're going to go to Tyson Fury here because
I thought it was Mike Tyson.
No, not Mike Tyson.
Oh,
no,
man.
Tyson Fury's interesting. They're good. They're good friends.
I'm
by
not
the way.
arguing that, but Mike Tyson has that really cool tattoo now.
Yeah, it's kind of like yours. Don't you have the same one?
No, I have a different one.
Okay. I know you like that tattoo.
I like any tattoo. I think they're cool. I don't have any, but I like them.
I'm going to put on the loop back, Dave, so you'll be echoing if you talk. So
I'm echoing now. It doesn't matter.
all right, hold on. There we go. Ooh, a commercial. They want to sell us something. And I can't take the commercial off.
Because you're too cheap to get the premium YouTube.
All right. Premium YouTube, that's all I need.
I have it.
Let's see what we got here.
It's time to turn things up. This pre-workout combination.
Control yourself, Dave.
Anaerobotine is the Fat Attack Stack from Snack.
I'm not the woman. I'm just
about
interested
15
in
to
losing
20
weight.
minutes prior to my workout. It's the
We'll get
perfect
there.
time
We have to
get
watch. This is capitalism. There we go.
Tyson, on a more serious note, obviously you talked about Vladimir Klitschko just now, and obviously you've beaten him in the past, but just wanted to get your view on the fact that Vitaly and Vladimir Klitschko and your fellow heavyweight world champion Alexander Usyk going back to their country to enlist and sign up and halt the invasion from Putin at the moment. I just wondered what your thoughts were for those guys that they want to protect their own country.
Fantastic, I'll be the first one to join up if England get involved or America. I'll be first in line for the job. My dad will as well, and all the boys will all be signing up to defend. So that's what I got to say. I think if you from that country living there, defend her. Love your woman and fight for your country. That's what I say.
And everybody should be absolutely pulling for the Ukraine.
Yeah, so there you go. Let me put us back, Dave, to where we need to be. I'll take off the echo, and we'll be okay.
And my question would be, if Tyson were to address that to Donald Trump, has a Trump ever fought for America? And the answer, I can answer that.
Neither has Jeff Van Drew.
Well, there's a lot. And I always think it's ironic that many of those...
And he was of age to fight.
...outspoken about the virtues of war. Your father fought, right, in World War II?
Yes.
My father fought. My uncle fought, one in the Pacific. My dad in Europe. And both of them came back still believing that they did the right, but were horrified by the idea of war. And I think it doesn't affect Donald Trump and some people like that, or Mr. Van Drew. They've never been there. How do they even know what it is? They watched, Battle of the Bulge?
Yeah, they'll criticize Biden because he's not being tough or this or that.
Oh, and if you really want to be patriotic, let's do the two women you dream about having together at the same time. The blonde Marjorie Taylor Greene and the gun on the hip, tight jean-wearing Keynesian who you would take over Dorothy, another famous Keynesian, Lauren Boebert. When Biden is talking about his dead son who served in the military, let's get up and scream.
Right.
There's a time to scream. That ain't the time.
Yes, they always talk about Americans. Hunter Biden, but they never talk about Beau Biden, because that's something that their kids would never do. At least not Trump's kids.
Yeah, okay.
I'm telling you, it's and maybe in a certain way, much as this feeds into anxieties, at least it gets us away. I have to say this. Maybe I'm thinking right now. For 1 week, at least, I have gotten away from thinking about Republicans, not completely, but nothing like before, Dave. Even this show hasn't really been about Republicans here and there.
Well, and I'm going to just say, in agreement, yes, and it's not bad. I wish there were things other than a war and the threat of an increased war and a threat of nuclear weapons to get my mind off of that. And I know what you're saying. I'm not, not disparaging what you're saying. And Veg, that's very true. Very few people
Some
did. My father never did, but friends who were in his group did. A few and a couple other people. Brian, I'm going to keep an eye on the show. So I have one more story. But why don't you get some more stuff on?
I don't really have too much more. I mean, that was everything I had to say.
Good. Not good that you had everything.
Right. No, I got it.
I want to bring something up that we're watching here, and it ties into Canada. It ties into politics, and for about 9 days now. Truckers have been promising. By
the way, Dave, can I mention about Canada with Freeland? Wouldn't that be great if she became Prime Minister of Canada and there were some issues with Putin. Here you could have a Western leader speaking in natural Russian and just give it to him. You know what I mean? Oh, that would be just amazing. You know, it's one thing to have Biden say something, but that has to be translated. But she could have done it.
True. So, like I say, for 9 days, roughly, give or take a couple hours, there have been threats, promises, etc., that a truck convoy was on its way to D.C. To protest whatever it was they were to protest. Now, there was one earlier. It came out of upstate New York. By the time it got here, it was one truck. I mean, it's laughable, but. And then the guy said, I'm going to wait until more come. And he went back home. The one from California is now indeed has made its way across the country. It is camped out in Hagerstown, Maryland. As anyone who knows the geography of America, Maryland is adjacent to the district. And they were supposed to do whatever they were going to do today or start it today. They did not. One of their leaders came out and said, "But keep your campsites here. If you're staying in a hotel, motel here, stay here."
Probably motel.
We're going to do something. Well, a lot of them stay in their trucks. I mean, they actually trucks have really nice kind of.
Yeah, I think they can fit hookers in there. That's what they usually do when they go to the bus stop or the truck stop.
Disparaging about you, but Paulsboro, that big truck stop there, as you get on 295. I've heard you spend a lot of time.
What is that? Exit 5 or 7 or whatever it is?
No, it's not the Turnpike exit. It's on 295. I mean,
no, 295, right. It's like exit. Oh, hold on. I know what you're saying. Right. It's like 47.
It comes into 2.
Right. I know what you're talking about. It's a big truck.
No, that is. Let's put it like this. If you can't find a woman there and you have some money, holy bejesus. Now, Brandon's right there. There's another thing. The Arab world is not going to, they're going to be with Russia or neutral. But anyway, back to these truckers. So I find it interesting. We're talking about Trump being a big man till it comes, or Lindsey Graham and scurrying away. And the truckers, their main complaint is, or it appears to be, a takeoff led by the Canadian truckers of vaccine mandates. Now, I don't know all about the Canadian thing, but it's my understanding.
Well, they didn't put up with the truckers. They eventually said, motherfuckers, don't do this.
But what I'm saying is,
they're hurting too many people.
You were talking before, Canada certainly took the pandemic much more seriously.
Seriously, right. They shut down the arenas for fans in their number one sport, for our fourth sport, and we let everybody in.
Right. So there's all that going on. But the irony of this, to me, is, let's have a protest in Washington, D.C., but they're not coming into Washington. They're going to supposedly try to shut the Beltway down. Now,
do what Trudeau did.
Well, it's really, I don't know. But here's the other thing. They're either not very good at planning.
And Christina Freeland, she gave him shit too.
Well, they're there. If I didn't like doing this show so much, and if I wasn't worrying about diseases only known to truckers, I would have loved to be out there tonight, reporting, or in my old life of doing that. But the irony is they are protesting mandates. And March 1st, and I believe this is the 5th, is that correct? Which is after the 1st. Almost every state has eliminated the mandates.
Right.
And I'll just give one in person. I had to go to, I'm not a big fan of them all, but an Apple store is there, and I was having some Apple related issues. And in a mall where since the mandate was given, I think I saw 11 kids the first week, maybe, or I'll make that number up, but I mean, to have a mask. And today it was 50-50. And if it was anything more than that, it was more unmasked. So certainly the truckers, I think they're just trying to do whatever it is they're going to do just to make a fuss. Last comment on this. State of the Union was Tuesday night, correct?
Yes.
The fence went back up. Everybody was on high alert.
They're not going to do anything.
And you have to be. You have to be.
Right.
You can't risk another January 6th. Do you know how many millions of taxpayer dollars went into that? Now, we've had four days because they weren't real sure when these truckers were coming in. They've got every police force. They've got all the police staked out at entrances and exits on the Beltway. Again, here, they don't view themselves as terrorists, but they are. And terrorists don't really care about winning or whatever. They just want to engender fear and make it difficult and force maybe the opposition to make some wrong moves. Well, we're not going to let terrorism win, but they're doing a hell of a job on America. That's it. So I'll I don't think I have anything to report, but I'll be on the Beltway tomorrow. So for business. So I'll see if they're out.
But you did say you had some inside news, but you already said it to us.
That was it.
Yeah, that was it. Okay. All right.
That was just not an inside news tonight. Just okay. That wasn't really it. But I will share this for what I hate Cher. I will tell you this.
I didn't like Cher or Sonny, to be honest with you. They were horrible.
Well, I understand that you found Sonny and his fur
He's
vest
a Republican.
kind of, and we're not going to make fun of him. He died on a skiing accident, smacking into a tree. But
can't Trump go skiing ever?
Literally where I live, as I've mentioned before, it's no big deal. I mean, but we have two 12-story towers. And it really is a veritable United Nations. We don't have every country, but we have, I know we have every continent except Antarctica represented here. And we have everything from diplomats, FBI, your favorite part of the Republican Party, your favorite state, because you admire them a lot, Utah. They have 2 apartments reserved where they send, because Utahns can't have sex. They send 4 young men to one apartment and 4 young ladies to the other, and they service Mike Lee and Mitt Romney.
Mike Lee, he's another winner. Mike Lee.
Anyway,
guy who doesn't believe in climate change.
Well,
and he's a moron too. So
I pass this along for
Mike Lee.
That's it.
Yeah,
one of
first time he's mentioned his name.
Loose acquaintances. One of my loose acquaintances, I saw him on the elevator. When we have elevator conversations. And I don't know, talking about something. He said, yeah, I just talked to my son. Now this guy is a governmental contractor, so he's not part of the government, but he works in cybersecurity. And he said, his son lives in Baltimore. He said, we just came up with a plan in the event that we get a cyber attack here, right? I mean, which is a possibility. That's probably more real than we'll get a nuclear attack. Mm-hmm. And I just asked him a question. I said, what do you tell an average person what they can do? And he said, I'll give you 2 pieces of advice. So I'm passing it along. One, he said, get some cash out of the bank, right? Now, if you have $10,000 in the bank, don't pull it all out, but have whatever you feel there. The reason being that, that if in the event of a complete cyber attack, banks will not be able to open, money will not be able to exchange. And he said the other thing to do is make sure that your car is always filled with gas, because you may have to drive somewhere. So for what that's worth, I mean, some people, I'm not going to do that. To me, it's wise advice.
You know what? I want to wake up from this all and just say, oh, it was just, this whole life was a joke.
No, this is not Dallas. That happened on the show Dallas. Remember?
You know, a lot of people are kind of egotistical. I don't like getting into this type of thinking. You know, we've all probably had this like, well, what would it be if we're kind of fooling ourselves, like an Alan Watts thing, and everybody else around us is phony and fake and just like automatons, and we're just
Right.
kind of believing that we're in this existence. And no, we're in this thing together, and we have no answers. As you say, Dave, there are only questions when you teach, really, in the end.
Right, that's it.
They only have questions. And here we are 2 hours later, and we haven't answered anything yet.
But you know what we've done, Brian, and I think this is important, not for us,
Right.
but as a, what would you say, a model. I believe this to be true. When you are afraid, you need to talk, right? Because keeping it in isn't helpful. There are people, I'm not going to talk about that, whether it's personal or whatever. So, you know, two things, and I promise these will be my last words tonight for real, because this is serious. One is, if you do feel fear and anxiety, talk about it with someone of like mind, right? And then the second thing is, if you're ever time to be kind to those who deserve kindness, and you say, hey, Dave, what do you mean? I don't think anybody supporting Donald Trump right now deserves any kindness at all. But I think everybody else in America and the world does. Be kind, because everybody's struggling with one or more of these hideous monsters that are facing us right now.
By the way, I got to tell you, Dave, this probably was more appropriate an hour ago, but they did interview the Washington Capitals' Alexander Ovechkin, the great Russian hockey player, and they asked him, I said, look, you know, what do you think about the situation? He said, well, I want the war to be over with. And of course, the person questioning him knew that he was friends with Putin. He said, what's your position on the war? And he kind of evaded. He just said, well, my position is I don't want the war. But it just shows you, I think there are 47 Russian hockey players in professional hockey, and they're frightened. And Dominik Hasek called him out. Chris Hasek is not Russian, and he said they were basically chicken shits and they shouldn't even play. And some people feel that way. Some people feel that way because they're not coming out. There's one guy that did a couple of months ago against Putin, Panarin, and then he had to go into hiding for like 3 weeks from the Rangers because his wife is back home. And this is the hardball they play. So I don't know what's going to happen. The NHL came out with a statement last week, Dave, and you know they had to. Is the NBA has, and the athletes, as Kareem Abdul-Jabbar said, should be coming out. But you're not going to get it from the Russian athletes.
Well, because it's easy. Look, it's easy in America to protest. They don't kill you often for
well, they have had some threats.
But the Russians will kill you.
Right. I think hockey's the only sport where you have a large number of athletes who are kind of under the gun now, and they're the ones that they're going to have to play it real quiet because the NHL
Brian,
is definitely.
My wife is over there looking at me, and I'm going to explain what happened. She seems to think that because our family is arriving and we have to get them back here at National Airport, that I have to leave. So people, this is my last lesson for tonight. If you are married for one day, or in our case, 49 years, and your wife gives you that look, you know what you do, ladies and gentlemen? I'm going to show you literally what you do. Good night, all.
Yeah. I really don't have any parting comments other than thanks for showing up, folks. It's always nice to see everybody, and we'll see you next week if World War III doesn't occur. See ya. think. Ta-ta.